Hello, welcome to the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the new MPC operating system, version 3. Obviously, it's a work in progress. We all know that. So we all know there are some issues, there are some bugs, but I just kind of want to go through it, kind of saying, or kind of pointing out the things that I like about it, the things that I don't like about it. I have had a few issues. I'm not really going to dwell on those, to be honest, because as I said, it is a work in progress. Akai, I'm guessing, are doing their best to make sure that these issues are resolved. They don't want an operating system that doesn't work properly any more than we do. So I have faith in them that they will sort out certainly the major issues. There are some smaller issues which I think probably are only relevant to certain people's workflows. Those things might take a bit longer to work out. I'm not blowing smoke up Akai's arse. I'm not sponsored by them or affiliated with them in any way. But, you know, generally they do tend to get things sorted out. Sometimes it takes a bit longer than we'd like, but, you know, they do tend to get things sorted out. So, as I said, it's a work in progress. So really, I'm just going to kind of go through the things that I like about it and the things that I'm not so keen or that I'm warming to. So let's jump in. Okay, so we're going to jump in. I've made up a little kind of test project here. I'm not sure how often we're going to actually refer to it. This is going to be quite random, bit kind of me rambling a little bit because there's so many things to cover. I did try and write a sort of outline of what I wanted to highlight, but it's just kind of all over the place. So I'm just kind of going to go through what I like, some of the new things, some of the things I'm not massively keen on, some of the issues, and just, you know, just generally kind of give you my impression or my opinion on the new software. I have got some bullet points that I'm referring to just over here. So if I do keep looking to the side, that's what I'm looking at. I'm not reading a script, but I am just checking things as I go through. First thing I want to say is updating for me was no problem at all. It literally took about a minute. I used the updater way of doing it, where you download the update and you have a USB plugged into your computer, into the back of your MPC, connected to the Ethernet. So it's really easy for me. I literally just went into update on the menu, preferences at the top. I hit update and I'd already downloaded the update, went through the update process. It took about 45 seconds to a minute. Also, I want to say that I had actually started a video for a client, a tutorial video for a client, and I'd started on 2.15. So to finish that video, I had to downgrade again. Again, that was super easy. I was connected via Ethernet. It was simple. 30 seconds, 45 seconds maximum it took me to do. So chopping and changing between the old operating system and the new operating system, or firmware, whatever you want to call it, is really, really easy. I haven't had any problems. I have noticed that there are some people that have had issues, but I personally haven't had any issues with it at all. So first things first, I changed things straight away just to suit my workflow, because I changed between the Live 2 and the MPC 1, and I like both of them to be exactly the same. So the way I have actually got this set up is probably more geared towards the Live 2, because there's certain buttons that you don't have on the Live 2 that you do have on the MPC 1. For instance, a dedicated program edit button, etc. So anyway, I changed this sidebar here completely from what the default was, just to suit my workflow, really. And that's very, very easy to do. You literally go into menu and you can just drag and drop and change things around. You'll also notice that on my shortcut bar, I've got a save at the bottom. Reason for that is that on the Live 2, there isn't a dedicated, on the MPC 1, I just press shift and save. But I like to be able to get to the save thing quickly, because I like to save often, because as we all know, sometimes the MPC likes to just randomly crash. So save. So I have save on my shortcut bar. Also, same again, track edit or program edit as we used to call it. I have that on my shortcut bar as well, because on the Live 2, you don't have the dedicated program edit button. So I would say that generally the way that I have this set up is geared more towards the Live 2, but I want it to be the same on my one, just because you know, because I chop and change between the two of them. But it's all to do with workflow, and this will be different for everybody because, you know, obviously it needs to suit how you work. Also, another thing I did workflow wise was when you first turn on the MPC with the new firmware, it has like a default project set up, which has an audio, a clip, etc., etc. I didn't really want that, so I have my own template set up, and I've had that for years, and I've just kind of changed it slightly to suit the new firmware. So I have it set up so that it literally just has a single program and a single audio track, and that's it. It just saves you having to go into Arranger and delete tracks, you know, basically. So I just have it set up that way, just for quickness sake. So when I turn the MPC on, I have a button at the bottom that says use the template, and I can just load that up straight away. That's fairly easy to set up. I have made a video about it, and there's a ton of other videos online. The way that you set it up on the new firmware is exactly the same as the version 2. So that's a good thing to have set up anyway, just to speed up your workflow. It just means you can just jump straight in, you don't have to mess around, etc. But again, that will be different for every single person's different workflow. So before we go any further, one of the main things that I noticed straight away, and this is again a personal workflow thing, and to most people it's probably not a big thing, but for me, I do actually write a lot of stuff in different time signatures, 5/4, 7/4, 6/4, and the ability to be able to change the time signature in MPC has always been quite valuable to me. The old way you used to do it was you would go into project defaults and you could just change the project time signature, and it was really, really easy. I can't find a way to do it on the new firmware. If there is a way to do it, then somebody please write in the comments below, because I literally can't find out how to do it. I've noticed a few other people have also mentioned it, so it's obviously a thing. And I'm, you know, again, as I said, it's a work in progress. But for me personally, and this is a personal thing, I kind of think that when you start a track and you choose how many bars you want, the tempo and the time signature, I think they're kind of basic fundamental elements of when you write a track. So the fact that I can't work on any of my older projects that are written in different time signatures as things stand is a bit annoying. And I do, believe it or not, I do actually write time signatures quite a lot, different time signatures quite a lot, for lo-fi chill stuff, for jazz stuff, for score stuff that I do for TVs and film. Quite often it's not in 4/4, and you know, not everyone writes in 4/4. And you know, I actually had various conversations with people on different forums where when I pointed it out, and they got very, very defensive very, very quickly, as if it was their life depended on it. Don't know why. That, well, most people write in 4/4, most popular music is in 4/4, etc., etc. Well, yeah, okay, that might be the case. It's not actually true. They're probably referring to the popular music that they listen to, but actually 4/4 isn't the... Okay, it might be the majority. Let's not go into that. But the fact is that there's a ton of music out there that's not in 4/4. So anyway, I'm sure it's something that Akai... Well, I know that Akai know about it, and I'm sure it's going to be something that they're going to put back in that you can just change, because it doesn't make any sense if they don't. I think if they don't, it's a bit of a deal breaker, and it's gonna piss quite a few people off. I'm not pissed off about it. It's just a little bit annoying. So there's that. Anyway, I've dwelled on that one too long. I've literally said in my brain I was only going to mention it, but you know, I've drawn that one out. So let's go through like how the main window is different and some of the things that I like about it. And obviously straight away it's quite obvious it's different. The color's different, which I think is brilliant. I love that. It's a much easier color to work with. Myself personally, I'm wondering if further down the line Akai are going to give you options where you can change the color or change the contrast, the brightness, that kind of stuff. That would be great if you can do that, but it's not, you know, it's not a big deal breaker. There's quite a few different things on it. Obviously the track is what used to be program. There's a few things about that which I'm not 100% happy about, but I'll explain that a little bit later. I've had to change my workflow, the way that I do things, especially when it comes to mixing in the MPC. But again, these might be things that Akai are going to be able to address further down the line. So I love the way that the screen's set up. I love the fact that I love this sequence record arm thing down there. That's really, really great if you remember to activate it. I have noticed quite a few people have said my record and overdub doesn't work anymore, and it's simply because they didn't have that turned on. It's a very easy thing to miss. They don't really dwell on it or point it out in the Akai videos when they're showing this, and I haven't seen too many other people point it out. It's glaring, it's right there in front of your face, but as we're not used to it, we don't think about it. But it's kind of a door feature. I like it. It's good. I love this. I love the way that you can go into the mix, the channels here, and it's really easy to change between pad and track. Now here is one of the things I don't like. This big message that comes up along the bottom. It's great to start with when you're not used to what you're doing, but after a while it does actually get a little bit annoying. So perhaps Akai are looking at having that as an option, that, you know, hints can be turned off and on. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it personally, but that's just a personal thing. It's subjective. Let's go back to tracks. Now, I might call them programs just by mistake because I still think of them as programs. I don't think of them as tracks. I suppose I'm going to have to get out of that habit. But anyway, I really, really like the way that it's set up. You know, it's really easy to go through stuff. I like the way that you can instantly go into submixes and returns, etc. This is really, really nice. Obviously, I can also change it on here as well. That's really cool. So I like that side of things. Being able to easily access the level, the effects, the sends, the ins and outs, all good stuff. And they were all improvements that were needed, in my opinion. They make it a lot easier to work with. It's more tactile. You know, again, with the mix, that's a lot more tactile. Being able to just, you know, hands-on mix differently, changing your pad mix there, you know, it's just all these are all good things, and I think they were overdue, and I think most people are genuinely happy about those things. Being able to turn that off and on, really, really cool. I like that. Another thing I really, really love with the track thing is double clicking on this and being able to edit straight away. Before, we would have to go into program edit, into samples. It's literally saving you 1 or 2 clicks to get into program edit. So that's cool. I like it. Again, it's a lot more tactile. I'm finding with this version 3, that I have a lot more on the touch screen. I'm touching the touch screen a lot more. So I had to change the kind of way that I work, because I was a really big, if you've watched my videos, you know I'm quite big on just using the data wheel. I don't really even use the Q links that much, to be honest. Not as much as I should do. I've tried to use them a lot more. If I had an MPC X, I probably would use them a lot more because they're all there. But I just find it slows me down a little bit in certain screens when I have to flick between the different menus on the Q links. But that's just purely because I've only got a 1 and an MPC Live 2. The Q link screen, by the way, I think that's really cool. I like the way that looks, being able to quickly edit. I mean, you know, you could do that on the older version, but just the way that it looks, the way that it's updated, looks really, really cool. I like that. You know, again, these are all aesthetic things, but, you know, they're good. I think they're for the good, generally. The arrangement window, obviously, is different than how it used to be. We didn't have this whole arrangement thing. I love that you can go into this arrangement and you can see the arrangement, very similar to a DAW. I've not used a force. Apparently this is a thing that has been available in the force for ages, so lucky you guys. I'm hoping, because I do hear a lot of grievances for people who use the force, how there doesn't seem to be many updates or as much updating and stuff like that, and I hope that with this new version of this software that they're going to, you know, concentrate on updating the force as well. I hope so. I don't own one, but I do feel sorry for the guys who do, because I do see quite a lot of people saying, you know, where's the force updates, where's the force updates. So this is brilliant. I love being able to flick through. I love you can hold it down and it gives you options. That's really that's great. Again, time saving things, easy to add a track. This I think is brilliant. Being able to open up the grid editor as well as having it on this screen, you know, you can change the size of it, being able to flick to automation really quickly. These are all really good things, you know, and obviously as well, you can flick across the top, you can go into grid automation, list, and back into the arrangement window. These are all really, really good things. I love this. I love being able to change the you know, again, it's tactile. It's using your fingers on the touch screen rather than doing it with the data wheel. That stuff's all really good. The shift where you can set locators, again, that's really good. And you can go into it on that window. No, not that window, sorry. I think it's that one, isn't it? Double click. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, still getting used to it. So you've got your locators window here. So it's not, it did exist in the older version, but I think it's easier to get to and easier to use. It wasn't something that I really used, to be honest, in 2, but now is that it seems easier to set your locators and things like that. It probably will be something that I would use. Great for people who use the MPC for live work, the locators. Will they stick with 6? Will they increase it? You know, it would be great if they could increase it, I think. And then going back to other things, you know, again, audio tracks, we're still on 8 audio tracks. I would love there to be 16. Again, that's just a small thing. I don't know whether it's a coding thing or whether the MPC, as it is, can't handle that. But for me, 16 audio tracks would be brilliant. So let's have a look. What else are the things that I like and what are the things I don't like? So again, quicker, smaller things, being able to change the type of track from key group plugin, etc. is really, really easy. I love how easy it is to just make a new track as well. You know, they're all things that existed on the other version, but they've just cleaned up the GUI and you know, and for the better, in my opinion. Little things like having to hold this down and then hit that to change the name. I'm not a massive fan of that. I liked the older version where I could just hit the letter A, I think it was, to rename things. I'm a big fan of keeping things super organized. I name stuff as I do it. I don't go back and name it later on. So I used to, it was a big workflow thing for me to just hit. I have a QWERTY keyboard. I would write really quickly, you know, so having to hold down and then do that, it's a bit clunky for me personally. But if you're not big on doing the whole renaming things quickly with a QWERTY keyboard, you're probably not going to be so bothered. But yeah, that's something that I wish there was an option to jump into renaming a lot quicker. The big thing for me, which I'm going to have to change my workflow on the MPC from the older firmware to the newer firmware, is the whole program track thing. With mixing, I mean, this isn't a deal breaker, this is a workaround. With mixing, I used to think of programs as a bus. So I would have, the way that I write beats, for instance, is I have my kick on one track, I have my snares on another track, I have my hats on another track. I separate it like you would in a DAW normally. You know, you generally wouldn't. I know a lot of people on the MPC will write them all on the same track, and that's great. This workflow will work perfectly for you because you've got everything on the same track. But I work differently to that. I have everything split up. So the problem is, the way that I used to work is I would have track 1 for kick, track 2 for snares, track 3 for hats, for instance. They would be still all in the same program because on each track I would select the program that I'm using. So under program in the mixer, for instance, I would be able to have 4 effect slots. I would then be able to have 4 effect slots for each individual pad. I would then be able to have send all my hats maybe to the sub 1 or sub 3, for instance, kicks to sub 1, snares to sub 2. But what's happened is now they've changed it to track, and you can't have it as a program anymore with separate 3 or 4 different drum sounds all in the same program on separate tracks. I've kind of lost that bus kind of thing. So now if I want to have 3 or 4 different hi-hat tracks, if I want to mix them all on the same bus, I have to use a sub. And obviously, as we know on the MPC, you're limited to 8 subs. So if they gave us unlimited subs or maybe 16 subs, for me, that would solve the problem. But it's changed the way that I'm going to be able to mix, or that if people mix the same way as I do, which tends to be top down, I have made videos about it, then you're going to have to change your workflow basically, because you can't have a program with 4 separate effects and loads of different tracks all going through that program. So that's quite a big thing for me, and I'm going to have to change my workflow. And yeah, pretty much I'm going to have to change my workflow. But it's not a big deal, you know. It just means that I would just have to change the way that I mix, the way that I order my mixing in the MPC. Okay, so another thing I noticed, which is a nice touch, which I haven't seen anybody else talk about, I'm sure somebody else has noticed it as well. Obviously, Akai know about it because they programmed it, is in the effects slots, put your level there, you go into your effects slots. Let's just change it to a track where I've got an empty slot. This is a nice little touch. If you just hold your finger down on the empty slot, it automatically loads Air Channel Strip, which I think is brilliant because Air Channel Strip is a really, really good go-to effect to have in your effects slots. Maybe it's the first one, you can do your EQ work, your compression work, gate work. So I think that's a nice little touch. It really speeds things up in terms of workflow. When you're mixing, you can just go bang, straight in, it's there. I like the fact that you can reorder the effects chain. That's something that's well long overdue. I know loads of people have been going on about that for a long time. Obviously, it's something that we've had in our DAWs for a long time. So that's a nice little touch. So another thing I wanted to point out, an issue that I have had a couple of times, which is a bit of a weird one, and I've reported it to Akai, and I can't always replicate it. I'll be working on a track, and I'll have a few, like let's say, okay, so with that track, there's a couple of samples. I loaded up like the first kind of samba sample. I then went out and looked for a drum beat, came back in. And what will happen is, so I've done a little bit of work. I've chopped up my samples. I put them in a track program, whatever you want to call it. And I then go back out to browser and I find a drum beat. Everything's good. I load the drum beat into my pool. I then go into sample edit, and then I start getting some really, really weird things happen. And this happens on both my Live 2 and my MPC 1. I'm probably not going to be able to replicate it live, so I will explain to you exactly what happens. When you go into sample edit, and then you go into chop, for instance, your different pads do different things. You generally use pad 1, and that will just be, you know, you'll just hit it and that will play the sample. But what will happen is when I hit pad 1, it will change from just one shot to trigger. So I'll hit it, and then I have to hit it and then hit it again to start the sample again. I can't just go da 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 da. I have to go da, stop, da, stop. Really, really odd behavior. And then it will then randomly just suddenly just not work, and I'll be hitting pad 1 and I'll just hear this tiny little click noise, and then I'll hit everything else and there'll just be a click noise. So then I'll press stop, and then I'll press play start, and things will start playing again. I'll press stop, and then everything's back to normal. And it will be fine again until I then load up another sample, and I'll go into sample edit, and it might happen again. Sometimes the starting and stopping won't solve it at all. So I literally can't edit the sample that I've just loaded in, and I have to come out and save what I've done so far, which I've normally done anyway before I even go into browse, because I just do that from force of habit. I have to turn the MPC off, turn it back on again. That's a ball ache. I don't want to have to do that. You know, those kind of things. Look, you know, I hear so many people say, oh, you know, sometimes it crashes, you have to turn off. But, you know, be happy, be positive, think, okay, sometimes this can happen. But it's not good for the workflow, is it? Especially if you're in, you know, you're in the flow, you've added a sample, now you want to find a beat, you go through a couple of beats, you load it up, you sample edit, and then suddenly things don't function properly and you have to close down the MPC and turn it back on again. Also, you know, if you've been wading through endless menus to try and find that beat, you've then got to go back and wade through those endless menus again if you can't remember exactly where it is. It's just a little bit of, it's an ironing out thing, which I'm sure Akai are aware of, but it's quite a major problem because obviously it's a sampler, and sample edit is something that we go into quite a lot. So I'm hoping that they are aware of it. I did send a bug report. I can replicate it, I would say 75% of the time. And it doesn't seem to matter whether I've got a big project going or whether it's just 2 other samples on the entire MPC. It just does it randomly. And the amount of times that I have to hit stop and play start to make it work again is completely random. But I can replicate it. It wasn't a one-off, and it does, you know, it does happen, I would say 75% of the time. So that is a little bit of a pain, to be honest. So overall, for me, in my workflow, everything else pretty much works exactly how I want it to. I'm not really coming up. I don't work with external synths. I don't work with Ableton. I don't use Splice. So a lot of the issues that I'm seeing, they don't really relate to me. So I hope those issues are sorted out really quickly for other people, because it's not great when you're used to using something and suddenly you can't use it anymore because of a very basic thing that suddenly completely throws you off and destroys your workflow. And it's not always fair to just say, oh, we'll just change your workflow. You should. What I love about the MPC is there's normally always a workaround. And finding those workarounds, for me, I love doing it. It's a challenge. It's an excuse for me to make another video and bore you guys with it. But I like the fact that you can have workarounds. But obviously, this is a work in progress. At the moment, there are a few fundamental issues which are operating issues. The sample edit problem that I have, for instance, that's quite a major issue in my opinion, because not being able to edit a sample, or the pads not working the way that you want them to work when you're trying to chop, that's not a good thing. So there you have it, version 3. We've all been waiting for it for a long time. Finally, it's here. It's a work in progress. I know some people are not completely happy with the way things are. I know there's quite a lot of issues. I guess the reason why Akai threw it out there for us to try was to gauge what we liked, what we didn't like. I'm guessing that they're doing their best to sort things out. I know from the forums and from people that I've spoken to that there are quite a few fundamental issues, and there are some smaller issues which only really relate to certain people's workflows. So, I'm sure over time those things are going to get sorted out. I think it was very brave of Akai to release it as a work in progress. And I'm hoping that it doesn't backfire on them. I'm hoping that they can sort out the issues. And yeah, it's generally, I would say I like it. I'm going to have to change my workflow in a few ways, but, I've been working, in studios with different workflows since the mid-80s, and I've had to change my workflow a ton of times. And, you just adapt. Without being a bit harsh, I think that you have to be adaptable when you work in this kind of industry. And as a musician, as a producer, as a beat maker, you have to adapt. We find workarounds. We've always done that. And, as I've pointed out in the video, there are some things that I'm not 100% happy about myself personally, but you adapt, you work around it. That's what we've always done, especially people who use MPCs or any synth, drum machine, etc. It's always about finding the fun workarounds for me. So generally, I like it, and I'm looking forward to seeing where Akai take it. And yeah, that's my 2 pence worth. So thanks ever so much for watching. This is the Quakes Motel. My name's Conan. Till next time.